Let's adjust our bodies so that we can easily sit relaxed and erect and alert. As we move into meditation, let us also relax the body, letting the body become as gently relaxed as we can do in this time. Unclench, stop holding, expand, let us relax. And to bring the mind into relaxation, let's also pay attention to our breathing, deliberately making our breath deeper, using the belly and the expansion of the lower body with each breath. Any thoughts that come, especially any repetitive thought, any thought we have had more than a few times, let us see if we can let it go and let ourselves just become more present. And should the thought arise, you may say these words to yourself: deeper. Let's go deeper. So feel into the body and especially into the heart, and feel your own heart as you go deeper. The breath focus there, the mind focus there, the intention to go deeper. And now with that which is conscious, let us bless that which is deeper. Bless it. And listen to it. And open to it. As we sit together in this holy place, let us listen to our depth. In the beauty of silence.
this day our daily bread. You said you would supply all my needs according to your riches. I have but to ask, and I shall receive. To go from here and share this love you gave to me, to show someone who's lost and help them find their way, the way to truth and faith, so they can be free like me, free like me. Lord, we are your love. Lord, we are your peace. Lord, we are your joy this day.
Good morning. I want to, before I get going, I just want to say we're going to have a congregational meeting right afterwards, and we're not going to give you a break, so I'll try to be brief. I can see that landed well. I also want to thank Michael. Michael, do you mind standing for a second? I'd just like to thank you for your contribution last week. I was not... As y'all know, I was out of town, and I didn't intend to be that long, but the circumstances were such that I felt like I should stay. So I called Michael, or Mary called Michael, and he said he would do it. And I asked him, hey, did you like it? Do you like doing it? He goes, no, I hate doing that. But he does a good job, right? So it's really good. We're on these the 5 principles of unity. We're going to do 4 of them. The 5th one is really do it. That's basically it. So we don't need to do that. We'll just do the first 4. And the first one is God is, in shorthand, God is. And the other one is I am, which is essentially a chip off the old block. And the third one is the one we're doing today, which is I created. And I created is tricky, in my opinion, because the first 2 are kind of in the absolute realm, a simple absolute in the sense that God is this transcendent energy that can't be named, and if you name it, you've missed much of it or most of it. And so it's not, you just have to almost go with an absolutist, transcendent idea. I am, this I am that I am is the part of us that is the same as the divine, which that's also more or less in the absolute realm. Now we get into the relative and the absolute realm. The relative realm of, you have to make things happen. In the absolute realm of which is more in the line of acceptance and acknowledgement, more the knowing of things. And so it's a little tricky. You'll have to bear with me if it doesn't seem like I'm being completely consistent. It's because I don't think this category, this principle is more complex in the sense that it takes both the normal world and the transcendent world and tries to show how they relate. So with that, let me say, I was talking with Anna. Y'all remember Anna, right? Anna's very big on prosperity and on the idea of using unity principles to help create prosperity in people's lives. And we were talking, and we were going, one of the things I think unity has not done very well is to tell people how to manage their money as a money manager would. Now, a money manager will tell you don't pay excessive interest, do deferred gratification, invest, etc. Be smart about your money. We called it in our conversation financial IQ. What Unity has been great about is financial EQ, which is essentially this idea that you hold a state of gratitude, a state of generosity, a state of expectancy that things will work out. In other words, a positive state of mind, but also you use the power of visualization, of prayer, to create within yourself the conditions that would allow money to come to you without you resisting it. And in so many ways, in inviting it. So that's a form of I created right there, which we'll get into prayer more next week, but it's essentially this being prosperous versus doing it right. And doing it right is really important. Do you know? To know how to function in the world is really important, and almost no amount of spiritual EQ will get you where you want to go if you don't do the world right. There are rules to this world. There are very practical things you need to know. For instance, if you're driving your car and you don't know that red means stop, that's not going to go well, right? Or if you don't know how to count, it will be hard to manage your money. Or if you don't know how to read, it will be hard to stay informed and to act wisely. These are practical things. They are this earth things. I'm not sure how many of those go with you when you leave here. You know, probably traffic rules don't apply in space. Or wherever it is you go. But what we're going to talk about a little bit more is really this state of being. And the state of being is really what gives you the quality of your life as much as anything. What is your state of being? And that is how you perceive the world. Here's a short little story. 3 women, old friends, have a reunion. They go to a resort, and they get there at different times. The first one is a type A personality, always coiffed, always ready, always prepared. She gets in, she takes a shower, and because she's on vacation, she doesn't do anything she normally does. No makeup, no hair combing, no, just puts on whatever she has and walks out. And there's a duck. There's a duck, and the duck goes whack, 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 whack. She goes, okay, all right, I'll go put some makeup on and straighten my hair and get dressed better. And the second one is a mother. She has 2 kids, both of them under 5. She's a bit harried. She's really been looking forward to this. She comes out, and she's a little frazzled, and the duck goes whack, 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 and she says, I know, but it's none of your business, so why don't you just be quiet and go back to where you belong? And she felt so good about putting the duck back in its place. And the third one was a singer. She wasn't as accomplished as the others. She felt a little insecure about herself because she wasn't as responsible as the mother, and she wasn't as successful as the woman who got there first. And the duck comes up and goes whack, 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 whack. She goes, oh, that's such a beautiful song. Thank you for singing it to me. So really, it's not always what's happening, it's how we interpret it, right? And we interpret it according to who we are, not according to what it is. We see the world more from our eyes than the world actually is. I think, if you've ever had psychotropic drugs, you know that's true, because they change your vision. For a moment you go, oh wow, it really is just perception. It's just perception that has allowed me to conform to this way of doing. And I'm going to talk about this in a peculiar way. It struck me this morning lying in bed. I was thinking about this, and I'm going to call it gerrymandering. And many of you know that in this state there's about a 50-50 Democratic-Republic number of voters. But as you know, the Republican Party has a supermajority because they've been very good at gerrymandering in the last 2 decades, I guess. So it's worked. It's the same with your mind. You have, let's say, a 50-50 life, but it can feel great. You can have a supermajority of great experiences, or you can have a supermajority of where the world's against you. All based on how you organize your thoughts and your feelings around it, your intentions, right? You can have a supermajority of whichever way you want it to go. It's not that necessarily the world has changed, just as the demographics have not changed. What really has changed is how you organize and think about them. And so you can gerrymander your experience into a supermajority of this is a good life. You can take a sow's ear and make a silk purse out of it, is essentially it. And so, how would you do that? Well, I think Mimi gave us a hint in the prayer. She says it's your intention and attention. It's what you intend to do with it and what you pay attention to. So what is given the most attention is what's going to be the biggest in your life. Years ago, I did a 10-day, I did 3 of these, but I did 10-day meditation retreats, and these 10-day meditation retreats were in the Burmese Buddhist style. Brutal. So you sit on the floor, and I'm not really that good at sitting on the floor. You sit on the floor for 11 hours a day meditating, and they're in 1-hour blocks, and you're not allowed to move during that 1 hour, nor speak, nor scratch your nose, or anything. And so the beauty of this is that your body begins to hurt a lot. Now, in this form of meditation, you're supposed to scan the body from head to toe, and then from toe to head, and then from head to toe, and toe to head, head to toe, toe to head, for an hour, right? You're doing this. And then you get a break, and then you come back and you do head to toe, toe to head. Well, I didn't hear the instructions correctly. And what I did was I thought, well, I go head to toe, I get to the point where it hurts, and I pay a lot of attention to that, thinking I could melt it with my mind. I couldn't. It got bigger and bigger until I'm just sitting in absolute pain till the rest of the hour. And then a little break, and then I would do it again. And I think it was on the second or to last day of the third 10-day experience of this that I heard it differently. And I went, oh. Because if you do it differently, you just go past the pain back into something that feels quite differently. And so there's only this one dot that's really hurting, but the mind that sits on that one dot only knows pain. The one that scans the rest of it has a different experience. And so it could be with your life as well. You have something, everybody's got something that's not working, right? But to what do you put your attention? Do you let it rest on that which is not working and leave it there? Or do you notice it? Maybe you can deal with it, maybe you can't. And then you move on to what does work, on to what else is happening, onto the whole experience. So in my case, I was gerrymandering for pain. And all I did was give it all the attention. And it became my big experience. So I was talking to somebody yesterday and said, so what did you learn from that? And I said, I learned to sit in pain. Not a bad thing, but not transcendent, for sure. And it dissuaded me from ever doing it again, I must say. So. Another way of, I want to talk about another idea. We were talking about IQ and EQ, essentially, about the form you have. And let's talk about this in another way slightly. And there's like two major ways of thinking about your life. And one is, I make it. I do this. Set my intention and I do it, or I let it happen. I surrender, right? And you'll hear spiritual teachers speak of both, right? You'll hear most of the self-help people say you need to make it happen. And perhaps a bias in the spiritual world of acceptance. But in my opinion, you need to be able to do both. You need to make it happen. You need to actually decide something and go do it. And if you don't, even those people who say they just surrender, what they're doing is they're making a very conscious decision to surrender, which is a way of making it happen. Do you see? There is a little quirk here. Making it happen, making your world happen, is using everything within your ability to get something going in your direction. And I think since we're on this earth and we have come up through the animal kingdom, this is vitally important according to our nature. It is our nature to go and get food, to find a place to sleep, to find a mate, to do that. It is a doing that we choose to do. And I think one of the things that we would be remiss in is saying, well, let God do it, right? Kind of like, the guys on the rooftop as the flood comes, and you know the joke, I don't have to go there, right? Ends up with a helicopter, ends up in heaven. Why didn't you take the boat? I was waiting for you, God. Well, why didn't you take the helicopter? I was waiting for you. He says, okay, you're an idiot. Right? We need to basically command our world and our own being to do what needs to be done. So the reason I wasn't here last week is my best friend from California, who I have been a friend of for 50 years and have done many expeditions on, was dying. And he had pancreatic cancer that was diagnosed 3 weeks before he died. And so I went out there and stayed until the process was over. Now, when I knew him as a young man, he was a student at Stanford and was heroic in his ability on the river and in foreign countries as we would go to do expeditions. He was always somebody who could get it done, who just made it happen. And for that, we remember him as a hero, as somebody we always honored on that. But when his diagnosis came, and the diagnosis was pretty profound, and it was metastasized in many parts of his body, he made a conscious decision to let go. And that was an act of will also, especially to go from a guy who makes it happen to a guy who surrenders to what's going to happen. And I thought the grace that he showed in that, and he had some humor in there. I'll tell you one of the things I thought was funny. I told somebody last night, they didn't think it was funny at all, but so he was in a bit of pain, but he didn't want to pee in bed, so he would get others of us to help him up, and that happened every 3 hours or so. And it was uncomfortable for him each time, and the time I'm talking about, it was his daughter that was helping him the most, and he finally gets back into bed, and he turns to her and he says, "Is this your first murder?" I thought that was brilliant. Do you know what it's really? And so he's surrendering into this. I mean, one of the, the drugs really do mess with your mind. Do you know what I mean? So the nature of perception was quite on display at that moment. He once turned to me and he says, "Hey, you look," for a moment there I thought you were Neusom. And I went, "Yeah, I am." That is me. But that willingness to surrender is sometimes the absolute right decision. There are times, as the song goes, there's a time to win and a time to lose, a time for war, a time for peace. There's a time for doing and there's a time for surrender. And there's a time for aligning with something that you would not have chosen, but is choosing you at this moment, and that's what you're doing. And to not fight it in a way that makes you unhappy, makes you miserable. Now, I don't think the process was any fun for anybody, but no one had to deal with someone who was fighting it. It was a process we were going through together. So that's one form of surrender. There's another form of surrender in which you really can combine some of your will with it also. And that is that you ask profoundly, deeply, at depth, what is mine to do? And then you do it. And you listen and you do it. And it may or may not fit your image of where you think you should be at that moment, but as you do it, it unfolds. It unfolds and becomes the right thing to do because you have tuned in to this bigger thing, bigger than your ego. One of the things I noticed during this week was that we talked last week about the wave. You are the ocean as a wave, right? You're not separate from the ocean, just as a wave is the ocean itself, but just in a form. And you're not separate from the divine. You are the divine as a wave. And to add to that image, sometimes when you get enough motion in a wave, there's a white cap on it. And that white cap is also the ocean, but it looks distinctly different than the ocean. It's not blue or green, it's white. It sits on top. And I think it's a perfect image for what the I statement is, for the egoic statement is that white cap. That's how much of you is I. We talk so much about, I want this, I, that I. It's up there. It needs to be there when it's active enough. It's what happens when waves move fast enough. And we as human beings move pretty fast in the sense that we have great cognition and the ability to think and plan and move. And so, of course, we would have an I operative. We would have a white cap on top of this wave, which is actually the divine. We would have that. But when you really get down to it, that white cap is only the white cap, not the wave. You with me on that? And I noticed that after being there with somebody who was dying, it was this white cap became really obvious that, oh, that's just that. It's not the whole of it. Are you with me? And so when the white cap can turn to the wave, or even better, to the ocean and say, which way should we go here? The white cap is in alignment with the whole process, right? And with that, you create it, but you don't create it in a world full of resistance. You become that which you are being called to be. And many times, we will come to that under duress. It won't be our first choice. It won't be the first thing we think of. It might come after a bit of stress of trying to be different. I was reminded of Nelson Mandela, who had been in prison for 27, 29 years. And Tony Robbins asked him, so how did you endure being in prison? He said, I did not endure, I prepared. Right? That which was a problem became his teacher. And when he came out, he did what I never thought was possible in South Africa. He made peace. I thought, I was there while Mandela was in prison, I was sure it was going to burn before anything else happened. And he comes out, and he has prepared his soul, really, to be a leader at such depth that both sides could go, okay, we'll do this. So, our ability to control, I created, isn't always in the way of the self-help books. Make a plan, do what you want, push, fight, scream. It's also by following the ocean and agreeing to the ocean and finding meaning, as Viktor Frankl would say, in any circumstance. That the wave knows it's the ocean and the white cap knows it's the ocean, and it goes together as one. I think that's the best way to create it. You can use all your IQ and all your EQ, but when you're on the right path, whether it feels like fun or not, that's when you're really on it. Let us pray. One of the skills I think we all need to have is how to turn within and to ask, and to know how to ask in such a way that we can hear. And for many it is by getting still, being quiet on the inside, and listening. Perhaps the white cap forms the wave, but the ocean gives the answer. So if you have a question that only the wave can answer, that only the ocean can answer, let your white cap ask it. And let us sit for a moment in the beauty of this place in silence. And listen to the ocean. May the thoughts, images, or words that come to us be instructive. And may we have the courage, the wisdom, and the willingness to make it so. And so it is.